Ricky Gervais stood at the Golden Globes podium in January 2020, looked straight at 200 of Hollywood's most powerful people, and told them he knew exactly what they'd been doing. The room went dead silent, not the kind where people are waiting for a punchline, but the heavy kind that falls when the truth hits too close. 5 years later, the Department of Justice dropped documents that confirmed every single thing he said that night. But here's what nobody has connected yet. The same week those files landed, Wendy Williams was locked inside a facility she called a prison, and Ellen DeGeneres had quietly left the country. 3 stories, one thread running through them all, that the industry tried for years to keep buried. Gervais had hosted the Globes 4 times before, each time pushing a little harder, testing the limits. By his 5th time, he was done pretending. He walked out with a beer in his hand and opened by saying he didn't care anymore. That got a laugh. What came next didn't. He went after the college admissions scandal, the streaming giants, and the corporations that would do business with anyone no matter what they'd done. The room shifted uncomfortably, like it was seeing its own reflection. Then he dropped the name Jeffrey Epstein. He told them many had flown on Epstein's plane, that they knew who else was on those flights, and that they were all friends with him. The camera caught Tom Hanks' face. No one laughed. Some stared at the floor. A joke that dies in a room full of entertainers isn't just a flop, it's a mirror. Epstein had died in his jail cell 5 months earlier. The official story was suicide, but questions lingered. The documents linking him to entertainment, finance, and politics were still years away. Yet Gervais stood there delivering what now sounds like a summary of those very files. How did he know? What did he understand that the audience was pretending not to see? After that night, he was never asked back to host. He confirmed it himself, no big drama. But he said something more important in later interviews. He wasn't talking to the 200 people in the room. He was talking to the 200 million watching at home, the ones without the planes, the awards, or the protection that power brings. In the British comedy tradition, he explained, the stand-up is like the court jester. The jester's only job is to say out loud what everyone knows but no one with something to lose will admit. He kept releasing material and speaking on these topics. Then in 2025, the Epstein files came out. Flight logs, financial records, emails, names across industries tied to Epstein's network. The punchlines from that night turned out to be a pretty accurate outline. Gervais noted it later, not with satisfaction, but with the flat tone of someone who wished he'd been wrong. But hold that thought, because while he watched the confirmation unfold, something else was happening on the other side of the country to a woman who'd been saying similar things for 30 years. And unlike Gervais, she couldn't comment at all. Wendy Williams built her entire career on saying what the industry silently agreed to ignore. Back in the 90s on New York radio, she named names in the music business that others wouldn't touch. In 1998 at Hot 97, her on-air comments got her fired. She later told Howard Stern exactly why. The pattern was clear: speak up, lose the platform. But she kept rebuilding. By the time her daytime show launched in 2008, she'd proven she couldn't be managed quietly. She'd been threatened, pressured, and even faced a guest on her own show who brought up her teenage son in a way that felt like a warning. Her face changed on camera that day. Still, she kept talking for 14 seasons. When the industry started cracking in 2020, Wendy was the only daytime host who openly said Ellen DeGeneres had a dark side the public wasn't seeing. Ellen's show had run for 19 years on one simple message: be kind to one another. It was on merchandise, in interviews, the whole brand. But in July 2020, BuzzFeed News collected stories from dozens of former staff. They described a workplace full of fear, cold treatment, rules like no eye contact with Ellen, and complaints that went nowhere. Warner Media investigated. Top producers were let go. Ellen addressed it on air, then ended the show in 2022. Celebrities gave warm tributes in the final weeks. Wendy didn't. Her silence said enough. Now Ellen lives in the United Kingdom, saying she felt targeted and that the criticism went too far. The people who worked for her told a different story. What was really going on behind that image? Meanwhile, Wendy faced her own battle. In May 2022, the same year her show ended, Wells Fargo raised concerns about her finances to a New York court. At 61, A guardian took control of her money and movements in a proceeding she wasn't even at. Her ex-husband later claimed it denied her proper representation. Diagnosed with frontotemporal dementia and aphasia in 2023, her guardian declared her permanently incapacitated by late 2024. But in early 2025, Wendy called into the Breakfast Club saying she wasn't impaired, that she felt trapped in captivity, isolated from the people she wanted to see. She told another outlet she'd passed independent competency tests. A neurologist outside her team reviewed the case and said she didn't have that dementia at all. Fans protested. Her ex filed a massive lawsuit claiming the guardianship had become a weapon. Wendy said she didn't ask for that. The arrangement stays in place, the medical opinions clash in court, and the woman who spent decades exposing secrets is now silenced in a facility she can't freely leave. The timing of all this, right as the industry faced its biggest reckoning? It's the kind of coincidence that sticks with you. When the Department of Justice released the Epstein documents in 2025, certain Hollywood responses were quick and quiet. One talent agent named in emails with Ghislaine Maxwell sold his agency fast, calling himself a distraction. Others stepped back, retired, or lowered their profiles without much explanation. The files showed flight logs, records, and connections that turned old rumors into documented reality. Names from entertainment, finance, and politics appeared, some the very ones Wendy had called out on her show years earlier. Those episodes are still online. Gervais watched from the outside and said his monologue had basically become a documentary. No celebration, just that same flat honesty. He preferred to have been wrong. 3 very different people. 3 very different positions in the same industry. Gervais had independence, money, audience, work that didn't rely on Hollywood invites. He lost the hosting gig but kept everything else. Wendy had no such buffer. Her life, income, and platform were tied to the very world she named. The cost was her show, her control, and a guardianship that kept her quiet exactly when her words were being validated. Ellen built an empire on kindness, but when the image cracked, she left for another country rather than fight inside. The last 5 years narrowed the gap between whispers and proof. Flight logs aren't gossip. Court files aren't hot takes. The documentation caught up. The same period saw major civil lawsuits against Sean Combs pile up, naming events and places Wendy had discussed publicly long before. She wasn't in those suits. She was just early. Gervais still isn't hosting the Globes. Wendy is still fighting in court. Ellen remains abroad. And the files keep being read. If Wendy had never been placed under that guardianship, what do you think she'd be saying right now? The industry spent decades perfecting ways to make certain truths harder to say. But the conversation is out there, and it's getting harder to contain.